Yeah, I'll turn the engine off just to so you can hear me a bit more. A few other things that I was going to mention before in the other video. You'll need to run a shut-off solenoid. They're normally, find one that's normally open, as you can see down there. Find one that's normally open, and so that when there's no power to it, the vacuum goes through it and shuts the car off, and as soon as there's power to it, it keeps it closed. So it's just a matter of key and ignition on, solenoids switched on, stopping the vacuum, key switched off, solenoids turned off, and it's normally open. So, and then just sends vacuum to your little switch down there, little solenoid down there. Trying to think of anything else. That wasn't too bad of a spot for power steering reservoir. This one's a HJ60 power steering reservoir. Then it's probably needs to. I probably need to run the 15B one because the pump was needing a bit more fluid. But did the job for now. I'll put the other one in later. Trying to think if there's anything else. Dipstick, you could probably modify that a bit more. It's just stuck behind there. This was a 15BT, so the dipstick was in the front of the oil pan. Luckily I had a 15B, and I just used the dipstick off that, so that's how I got around that. If you've got a coaster bus engine, there'll just be a little Welsh plug in the spot for the dipstick down there. So you'll just need to punch that out, and then you can run. If you can get a dipstick, then cool. If you can't, then make something up. You could probably get an aftermarket dipstick that'd probably go in the same hole. You can adapt it to fit. Just check the heights of your dipstick in the oil pan. I think it's almost to just below the crank, so that's probably where you want it. You don't want your oil on your crank, but yeah, that's what I did. So yeah, probably worth rebuilding your starter motor. I put new bushers and, or whatever you call it, those little contacts. Yeah, so buy anything from Japan. Don't get any cheap shit. Worth it with a starter motor. Never had a problem with this one, which is good. I need to upgrade my belts, but not too worried. Trim the fan down. Probably not the best idea, but if you measure it all evenly, it should be right. I could probably go in the shroud a bit more. This was trimmed back for the 42 power steering. You could probably extend it a little bit, but then you've got gaps, tiny bit of gap there, so you get too close, then you're going to go to that power steering pump. Yeah. You don't have to run that pressure switch there unless you've got an idle up or the aircon idle up. That's all that's for. Yeah, probably have to block that hose off if you want. That's just another bypass hose, so I'm not too worried about that. The BJ42 doesn't run it, and there might be a reason for running it somewhere else. On the, I think the VE pumps need that in it to circulate and cool down the fuel, but this motor didn't need it, so I'm not worried about it. Trying to think of anything else. Yeah. You can probably piss off most of the stuff that was bolted onto the top, depending on what you have. This housing here is a 15B FT housing. Thinking about getting laser cut a plate so people can piss off the one with the PCV return there and just run a standard bolt-on plate, and then run like a 3-inch inlet. Something to think about. On the 15Bs with the VE pumps, they've got a throttle body in there as well, which when you run turbo you don't need. So you can piss that off, but it also runs the linkage down to the pump, so something else to think about when you're going turbo on a 15B F non-turbo. Still yet to tune this pump. It's just hard to get at the moment for the fuel screws and all that crap. So figure that out when I get the chance. Seems to be doing alright for now. Yeah. But yeah, definitely bigger airbox. 3 to 4 inch, minimum 3 inch to the turbo is probably worth it. I've only got 3 inch there and 2.5 at the back of that, so that's restricted there. So 3 inch all the way would be acceptable. 3 up to 4 inch would be definitely worth it. As soon as I put a 4 inch pod filter on this thing, it just opened it right up, and it probably had an extra 15-20 horsepower, I reckon, just by putting the pod filter on. So they like to breathe, these motors. But yeah, that's a temporary turbo. I'll run a big one eventually once I turn the fuel up. So trying to think of anything else. Yeah, just vacuum hose straight to the shut-off solenoid. You don't need to run all that extra crap that comes with it if you're just putting it in one of these. If you've got a solenoid and it's all set up, then put it all there and block the other hoses off if you don't want to piss it all off. But that's all I did, and then I just ran the hose back to the solenoid. So. Yeah, really happy with it so far. Needs a little bit more fuel and air, but it's all running well, idling nicely and running nicely on the highway. I get about pretty good fuel economy, probably better than my D-Max. So, and that runs about 10 to 12 litres per 100k. So it's probably in that good operating range from that 8 to 10 per 100. So yeah, you've got to be happy with that. Means you can go to your 4x4 location, wheel all day and still have plenty of fuel, so not worrying about having to fill up. Yeah, worth keeping your sensor. Worth keeping your sensor from your old motor. I had to buy one because I already sold the motor. Make sure it's if you keep the sensor, make sure it's on with the 2 plugs, not the 1 plug, because that's the sensor for the gauge. So yeah, power steering will go in eventually. If you don't run power steering, you can run that as a onboard air system, and then run like a pressure switch that switches it off when it's at pressure in the tank. Something I was thinking about doing, but wouldn't mind aircon, so maybe I'll run another AC pump somewhere else and run onboard air, but that's tomorrow's or the next day's problem. Worry about that later. Yeah. Happy days. Keen to bend some more panels soon. Just needed a new diff. Well, upgraded diff. Anyway, that's probably where my rattle is, under the bolt there. Other than that, keen to keep wheeling. Anyway, good luck with your builds, whoever's doing them. Pretty straightforward, and yeah, totally worth it. Obviously next thing's bigger turbo and a bit more fuel, and then get out and send it. Cheers, catch ya.